Good morning. I see a few of you are here. Christopher, Matthew, got a code? Nah, is that it? I don't know if there are more or not. Anyway, there are 4 of you here. Back where I was. There you go. Anyway, good morning. It's super cold here. -4 feels like -6 or -8. This was a cool but somewhat nicer day a few days ago. That I think it was Monday afternoon that it had been very dark in the morning, and then the clouds broke up, and we ended the day with nice blue sky, but these really big, enormous clouds, and they were slowly moving across the sky like they were giant spaceships flying over us. And this one here was closing in on the Loyola high rise. That's it over here. So just a little bit of St. Mary's again. This is looking across the northwest arm that I've shown you before, but from other locations down at Fleming Park. We call the Dingle Park, the Dingle Tower. Anyway, uh, so I do have slides for today, but I'm not going to use them. The presentation I'll put back up again in post. It's on material that is relevant to the quiz on Saturday. I've also posted the slides for next Tuesday, because I'll have to use both of those in one day. What I found yesterday with both classes is we spent the whole class, in fact, we went overtime both times, looking at the questions on assignment 4. And so I'm going to do the same for you. That it takes a while. I'm recording the class and we'll post a video of it. It takes a while to download the video after the class is over. It's quite slow. And it also takes quite a while to upload it again to YouTube, to put it back up again so you can see it. But the classes from yesterday, I finally got posted late last night. So if you want to see the equivalent from yesterday, you can see it right after we're finished today. And I'll try to go through approximately the same material. Along the way, if you would post questions and that sort of thing, that would be appreciated. Yesterday, it was helpful to have students raise points as we went along, and make sure that I cover the appropriate material. So unless there are any objections to me talking about your assignment for tomorrow, that's where I'm going to go next. Okay, so bring up the questions. Let me shrink this down so we can see, I can see the chat. Hey, come here. There we go. Okay. So good morning, Darcy. I didn't say good morning to you. As it sounds as it says in the assignment, I've taken the data you looked at in assignment 2, and you use pivot tables, pivot charts, that type of thing, to go and explore generally the summer earnings of students. You also looked at depression. We'll try to use that too. I was trying to find a little bit of the material that we could reuse but look at from a different perspective. And what I've had to do here to go and analyze the data differently is to recode it, clean it, do those sorts of things. And I'll explain some of those things as we go. You don't need to know them to do the assignment, but they may be useful pieces of information if you were to go and do a study subsequently using some of the tools that we've got in the course. So and I also make reference to assignment 3 because this assignment involves some regression, but it's a different data set and somewhat different tasks. So let's go and look at the data file. and that's here. That I think yours is as a table, and for one of the classes yesterday, I converted it to a range. And so I just want to show you one thing here, that if you're, if I was, no, I don't want a pivot table. I want um, uh, just to make this a table. Okay. So, and it'll get all my stuff. So this is the way it appears, I think, in the file that I posted online to you. If it doesn't, then still, if you're confronted with a table, and we can do different sorts of things with a table in terms of filtering and sorting, and I used it as a table to clean it. That if you've got a table and you want to, no, I don't want a table anymore. I don't want these things. I just want it to be a regular spreadsheet with just things in it, numbers and stuff. You can do that. That go into it, and that in my design tab here that I've got, that's the special tab for the table, there is a thing over here that says convert to range. A range is just a regular spreadsheet, and it's a table with columns of information is what a range is. And you can convert it back again. And it says, you want to do that for sure? Yes, I want to do that. Its appearance looks the same because of all of the coloring that was put in here as a table. But it doesn't have the little pull down things anymore, and it doesn't function like a table anymore. So if the need arises, you can flip it back again to being a regular spreadsheet and not a data table. But it doesn't matter for this assignment, I don't think, which way you have it. So just to show you what I did to it, I copied over several of the variables, just the ID in case I needed it, what class students were in, their gender, their home, their high school average, their age, and their summer earnings. So what I wanted was several variables that were numeric for the assignment because we're doing regression. And I wanted a couple that were categorical because I wanted to look at nominal variables in the assignment as well. Um, and but then I found I had to clean the data because I'm going to use regression analysis. So in regression analysis, to do correlations, to fit models, lines, that type of thing, I can't have any blanks, no blanks whatsoever. That any of the variables I use have to be fully populated. There has to be a number in there. So the students without summer earnings that just gave me a blank or gave me a zero, which I presume meant nothing, I had to remove. I took all of them out because they didn't earn anything in the summer or they didn't tell me what they earned. So those blanks I had to take out. There were some of the others, though, that didn't tell me where they were from. So I guessed. I put them down as being from Nova Scotia unless I had some reason looking at other things to think otherwise. So I guessed what values they should be because I didn't want to throw out more data. Um, there were a couple of the ones remaining that didn't give me their high school average. So I looked at what was the average for all the other students. That was, I don't know, around 78% or 82% or something like that. And so I put that number in for those students. So um, I filled in some with what I thought was an educated guess or with the average of others as a value to put in. I think I had ages for everyone, but if I didn't, again, I probably would have put in the average age of students in the class. Just a guess, not sure. Um, that and so that filled in things. The other thing that I did to the data set was I was going to use uh, regression analysis, and I wanted to use nominal variables. And we talked about that in the second, third class on multiple regression. And you can put in male or female, but you've got to code it as a number because I can't put a word in a formula. So for females, I made them 1. And for males, I made them 0. So I used a VLOOKUP, just like you converted numbers to words. I went and converted words to numbers, but just to 0 or 1, not 1, like with home, where we had many different values. I can't recode that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have to make them, to make regression work, into only binary variables will work. And I've got a lot of different locations. But what I did was what you did in assignment 2. And you grouped them into 3 groups: Nova Scotia, Canada, but outside Nova Scotia, and outside Canada, international. And so I set up a VLOOKUP that said, if you are international, give me a 1. Student from South Asia, recoded as a 1. Student from Nova Scotia, recorded as a 0. And let me go a little further down here. Got to, nope, not quite. Oh, there it is. Here's Canada outside Nova Scotia. It was coded as a 0. So only locations that were outside Canada were coded as being a 1. And so Africa was a 1, and Caribbean was a 1, and South Asia was a 1, and that coding. For Canada outside Nova Scotia, I had to create a new column, a new variable. I called it Canada, so that if you were international, you're not Canadian. If you're Nova Scotia, you're not outside of Nova Scotia. So all of these ones you can see are 0, 0, 0, all zeros. But if we go down, here was Canada outside Nova Scotia. It appears as a 1. So if you've got more than one group or 2 categories, you have to create lots more variables. So I've got one that is for international. I've got one for Canada outside Nova Scotia. If I'd wanted one for South Asia, I would have had to create another one just for South Asia. And I also coded, if you're in the class of 2020, if you're in this year's class, you're 1. But if you were in last year's class, you're 0. So I did all this recoding of things so that I could do regression calculations and correlation calculations. So my data set's been reconfigured that way. Let me go back to your assignment. So it asks, calculate correlations among the variables. And I've got this whole bunch of things here. And now correlations are really to reflect like a scatter plot. Is it a scatter that's going up or a scatter that's going down? If I've got a variable like international at 0 or 1, 0 if you're Canadian, 1 if you're international. And if you recall the first class on classification, I tried classifying employees as being good employees or bad employees. And then I had scores on them, their verbal score, their math score, and like their math scores for the bad guys were over on the left, and for the good ones they were in the middle and over on the right. But it was a very strange scatter plot, if you want. And to calculate a correlation in that, does it really make sense? Am I going to get a really high number? They're not going to fit around a line. So don't expect correlations to be really close to 1 when I've got these types of variables. And imagine some that are just binary variables and binary variables, like gender and international or something. They're at 0, 1, and 0, 1. So it's like putting them into 4 boxes. It's not really a scatter. So I can do it because it's just a calculation, but it may not mean an awful lot to you. But I've suggested you start out and just do it. So let's go back, and I'll be pasting it in there in a minute. Back to my data. And if you remember how to do correlation, we need all of the columns that we're going to be working with to all be side by side. Okay, so I've, instead of putting class 01 over here, gender 01 next to the gender column, and international and Canada next to the home column, I put all the numbers over in one area and all the other stuff over on the left. Okay. The assignment's complicated enough without me making you do a lot of other types of activities here. So I go up to data, I go to data analysis, I go up to correlation, and it's got a bunch of things from yesterday. Let me just take that out. I don't know if you can see this or you have to blow it up. It asks for the input range. So where is the data? And it's from column E, row 1, over to column K. And because I've eliminated data, whereas in your assignment 2, I think you had 265 values or 255, I've only got 180. I had to delete so many. It's in columns. I've got labels. I'm going to put things in a new worksheet. And it gives me a table like this. Let me make it bigger so we can see it. And look at what do these numbers mean. So they're correlations. They go from -1 to +1. If it's close to -1 or close to +1, then it means a strong relationship. And if it's close to 0, it means it's a very weak relationship. And you'll notice most of the numbers are like 0.0 something or 0.1 something. Here's a 0.22, a 0.32, a 0.27. That's as big as they get. So these numbers are all very, very small. That there may be a correlation, they may be related, but it's quite weak. If we were to do a scatter plot, it's probably very scattered. And we'll do that. That the other thing you look at is you look at the size of the number, close to -1, close to +1, close to 0, and the sign of it. Is it negative or positive? So this here, if I was just not looking at the number, but just at the minus sign, says that as you get older, the older students report lower high school averages. Doesn't mean they're not as smart. There is a belief, and I think it's justified, not over the short time span, I think, that most of you have been since graduating high school. But if I look over the last 40 years, yeah, the grades of students coming in from high school today are much higher than they were 40 years ago. That there's grade inflation over time. So it may be, when I was a student, to get an 80 or an 85 was remarkable. That was an incredible achievement. Whereas today we see lots and lots of students with grades in the 90s, which were just unheard of when I was a student. So there is some of that taking place. But that's what the minus sign means. This one here is international is one of those binary variables. And it's 1 if you're international. So international is here, Canadian is there. Well, actually, this is negative. So it says international students, on average, have lower grades coming in than Canadian students. That doesn't mean they're not as smart, again, because we have different school systems. And at least in some countries, grades it's much, much harder. I don't know what it's like today, but it used to be in some of the former British colonies, to get an 80 was almost impossible, and a pass grade might be a 40, not a 50. It's just because they just don't have any at the top end, so that the averages, of course, then would have to be lower. And so maybe that's what we're seeing as different grading systems. I don't know. And we've got some other ones that there's a positive correlation between gender and international, seeming to suggest international students are more likely to be female than Canadian students. That it would suggest that you've got lots of international females and Canadian males, that being the pattern there. But the strongest one here, we're interested in looking at patterns of summer earnings. The strongest one for summer earnings seems to be age. The older you are, the more you seem to earn in the summer. And that's just what the data is showing. And just like before, I've tried to hypothesize reasons. I can't prove them because it's just what the data shows. I could argue that older students would have had more work experience. They have more time to get work experience, and with more work experience might get higher pay. Older students may well be people that left school and are working full-time and studying part-time, and because they're working full-time, earn a lot more in the summer than younger students. Don't know. We'd have to investigate it further. But this suggests there is some pattern here between age and summer earnings. Now, in the assignment, it asks you to copy this into your assignment. And what I've been seeing is students with your past assignments, you would take a screenshot like this. You go, oh, and so I've just copied my screen. And whoops, that's not it. Where's my word? And I could go paste it in. And when I was marking these, it was challenging because this is really small and my eyesight's not as good as yours. I know you can read tiny things on phones. I can't anymore. And uh, and it wasn't clear when I asked for a screenshot how much of the screen did I really want to show you, or did I expect you to show me. Generally, it was just what was the important piece of information that was there, or a portion of it, so that I could see what was going on. So what you could do if you were dealing with this and you'd done a screenshot, and this is the way I used to do it until someone showed me only this term, better way to do it, because the way I was doing it was a bad way to do it. And I'll show you why. I cropped it because this is a picture and we can crop a picture. And you use this when you're in the picture, you can go to picture tools to format and crop. And cropping means I'm just squishing it. I'll squish it this way and I'll squish it from the bottom. And where is it at the top? Whoop, I can't see it. There it is. Maybe I squished it down like that. And there I've got my picture. And then it's small. So this is how I started building the chapters in your text, was this way. And so I've got this picture here with a table, and it just got the important stuff. Don't do it this way. I was doing it, but it had a real problem. If I save the file as a PDF, which is for the most part a picture file, it might be okay. But I've been posting files as Word documents generally. When creating your text, it was converted to an HTML document, and a bunch of changes had to be made during that conversion, and we fixed things. But the problem with this is it's still a picture that's been cropped. So if I go back to crop, let me make it smaller again so I can do this. I got my whole screen back. I could go and, whoops, sorry, and make it big again. And you could go and see other things on my screen if they were visible to you. And from a privacy perspective, not a good thing. If you only want to show a table, you only want to show a table. You don't want to show anything else about yourself. So to hide personal information, and you never know what you've got open or showing there. You may forget. Don't do it this way. So I'm going to get rid of this. So how do we do it? Well, there are two ways that you may want to do it. And one of them is, well, 2.5, 3 ways to do it. I could just copy this. So I've got the table I want to show. So if I just want to show the table, nothing else on my screen, it's just one element like a table or a chart, you can go and right click, hit copy, and go to your document, and you can paste it in. But you can paste it different ways. I am an old guy from the first days of definitely from the first days of desktop computers and the early days of mainframe computers, that uh, we didn't have all these graphics and different tools. We didn't have a mouse, that sort of thing. And we did everything by just the keyboard, and we used shortcut keys. So if I wanted to copy it, I would hit the Control key and C. If I want to paste, I hit Control and V, and it pastes in the table for me. That it's given me the whole table from Excel as a table. So I can go and edit this. Notice this number here, here's the minus sign. I got to make that column wider. So I can go in there, change it. If I wanted to emphasize that this was the biggest one, I could go in and change its color. I can go and edit the table, which is sort of nice to be able to do. The reason I can do this is because I have taken the whole thing from Excel, and actually this table is linked back to my spreadsheet. And sometimes, not all the time, when you make changes in your spreadsheet, it may change your Word document. I haven't had it happen with tables. Oh, with pivot tables, I've had it happen. But definitely with pivot charts. I've had a miserable time when copying a pivot chart into a document and then going and changing my pivot chart in Excel and copying it over. It ended up changing other things. So you have to be careful. So this is one way of doing it, and I can edit it that way. Whoops, let me see, I don't want to edit that. Another way, because I've already copied this, I should have it still available. No, it's not available to me to paste. Let me go back again. Sure, I've got it copied. I go back to where am I Word here. And when I go to right click and go paste, no, it's copying the wrong table. Hold on. Just a minute. Let me copy this again from scratch. There we go. Notice with paste, I don't know if you can see this, it's very small, but it has all kinds of different sorts of options. And the tiny print in it says that this has to do with formatting, but it can also say linking it to the source and linking it. Or I can paste it as a picture. If I paste it as a picture, it's nice and secure like a picture. I can't change it in any fashion. I could go and crop it, but I can't change the formatting. I can't go up like in here with this one. I could change the style of it, make it prettier. Maybe it looks like that. I can do those sorts of things, but with a picture, I can't do any of those things. So I can't do anything to it, but it's frozen. So it can't be edited, can't be altered, and that may be attractive to you. And there's one other way to do it as a picture. And this is what I should have known how to do, but a student showed me how to do. That we were having a tutorial session with the student, and he shared his screen and was doing questions as we were talking about the assignment. And he used a snipping tool. SNIP, snip. And that there is one on PC. For mine, I have to hit Windows, Shift, and S, turns my screen dark, but then I can go and pick out what I want. And this is great when I want to take more than the table. Maybe I wanted to include other things, like maybe I wanted to include the labels here for some reason. I wanted to get closer to a screenshot. That when I do that snipping, it puts it in my clipboard. And then when I paste it in, it has everything in there as a picture. And I can size it, I can make it smaller or larger, I can crop it like a picture, but it's fixed again. It's just a picture. On a Mac, it also has a snip tool. Student texted me as to how to fix that, and I can't think of what it was, but there is a way within Macs to do snipping and pasting. So think about that. It's useful. Anyway, let's get back to the assignment. So I've got my correlations. Oh, Command Shift 4. Thank you. That so that's what you should generally be using in your assignments. So in this one, I didn't ask for screenshots. I just said copy the table or copy the chart, because I don't need in this assignment to see the rest of your spreadsheet. That now it asks for a scatter chart. So I go back to my data, and I want a scatter chart that's going to have age. It's one of my variables. Whoops. And it's going to have summer earnings. That's the other one I want. And I'm going to insert, and I want a chart, and it gives me a scatter chart. That's what I want. Good. And I could just copy and paste that into my document if I want. Now, this one here is linked back to the original, or at least it's as a chart. So I can use the same thing. I have design and format tools, just like you've got in Excel, and it's linked back to the data in Excel. So if you change the data, it should change the chart as well. So watch out for that. That's where I've run into problems. So normally I'd say copy it in as a picture and not that. In the assignment, I just said copy the chart. I didn't say you had to format it. In practice, I'd say, no, you should be. Get in the habit of this. So go and put in that this is age. Oops, I don't need that. And go up, add a title for the vertical. Say it's earnings. Now this is just a variable name. If you want to give it a title, you could have oops. That if you wanted to format it better, I got a lot of white space over here because I don't have any 10-year-olds in the class. You could select that axis, could right click, and it says format. Oops, no, I don't want that. I want to format the axis. Oh, format chart area. Is it giving me? No, that's not what I want. Excuse me. Should be. There it is, format axis. Watch it. At the bottom, it always says format. But depending upon how you do the selection, we'll see this later with Box and Whisker, it doesn't always give me the right choice. sometimes I have to do it more than once. I'm going to take out some of the white area over here. I'm going to start from an age of 15. And that makes my graph make better use of the worksheet that I've got here. So I'm trying to maximize the use of my worksheet. If I look at it, yeah, there's some scatter here. Most students are really down here, under 25, earned under 10,000. And then I've got all these others out here. These might be outliers. I don't know. Not at this stage anyway. That although I cleaned the data some, there may still be some outliers because I just did simple cleaning. But it does seem to be sloping up, and that's what the correlation said. Not a really strong pattern though, but this was the strongest pattern that we had. By the way, if you're formatting axes like I did here, and I cut my horizontal, cutting the horizontal is common and useful because often it starts at 0 and your data doesn't start there. That on the vertical though, it's generally recommended that you always on the vertical axis have 0 in there. Either it starts at 0, or if you've got negative values, then it's not a problem. 0 is going to be in the middle. But chopping a graph so you only show the top portion and you leave all the lower stuff, it's not good practice. It's viewed as distorting things. It exaggerates certain aspects of things. But anyway, let's move on with the assignment. So make some comments on this. Primarily, you would be commenting I'd expect on the chart, saying, well, overall correlation is weak. Strongest seems to be with age, but by the scatter chart, it doesn't seem to be very good either. I just want you to think about it. Get in the habit. So a lot of what I'm doing is helping you build habits. Get in the habit of always looking at your data, and a scatter chart is one way to look at your data. Then, so you put your comments in there, and then we're going to build a regression function, and a simple one here. So let me get back to Excel, back to my data here, and regression, that's in the data analysis again. So I go back to data analysis, and this time I want regression, like you did in assignment 3. And let me just take these guys out. Whoops. And these ones out. Excuse me. Okay. So we need to tell it the y variable. So the vertical variable first. Okay? And so it's in K1 up to K180. Or you could go and highlight it. And my x variable is over here at age. And it's really easy to get these backwards. In the 11:30 class yesterday, I just automatically put in the location of the first column and the second column. And so I put column F for the Y and column K for the X. And I ended up getting a stupid model. It was incorrect. Okay? It's really easy to make the mistake. So Y is what's on the vertical. It's what you're trying to predict. X is what you're going to use to predict. Your explanatory variables are the X variables. Okay? I've got labels, and I'm going to put it in a new worksheet. And as a habit, I click on residuals. Okay, again, and I don't really need the residuals or this plot, but I just asked for it anyway. Let me make this bigger so we can see it. Okay, so what does this tell us? Just to review again what this table shows us. The first table is overall performance. Is the model any good, is the question. And the only things we look at are R-squared, and we look at standard error. Those are the general things. I didn't ask you to look at this in this model, but if I had, you'd say R square, 0.10, 10%. So out of the 100% variability, I've only explained 10%, not doing a very good job. If you got 10% on a test, you would say it's not a very good test. Standard error, how far off would I expect my errors to be in predicting? So if I'm predicting how much you earned this summer, I could easily be off by about $6,000. That's pretty wide when most of the students earned less than 10. Not very good predictions. And that was what we saw in the scatter. What's the model that you've got? The model that you've built, let me type it up here, is that summer dollars, oops, just a minute here, are equal to, put an intercept down here, and it says minus 444.78 plus 455 and 8969 times age. The intercept is the starting value. This is the slope of the line. So this is my formula I've got here. Okay, that's how you read these coefficients. It's like going back here. There's my chart here. Okay, and if I went to quick layout here, and there's one here I'm going to use. Okay, get rid of some junk here that I don't need. Get some more space. So here was the chart. Here is the equation of that line, though it writes it with the x variables first and the intercept second. Okay, that the line is hard to see here, so I don't think it'll let me move it. No, hold on then. Let me draw a line. I think this one is roughly the same. I'll change its color, make it bigger. Again, my poor eyes. There I go. Now I can see it. So this is the line it calculated. Doesn't look very good, does it? Look how wide the scatter is. Look, this one here, student earned $50,000, and the model would predict, I don't know, about 12,000 or so. So it's pretty far off. This line here, the minus 3,448, it's like having it down here. Oops. At crossing at minus 344. What's the number? 3448. The intercept. That's where it's crossing the axis down here is at that number. Okay. Oh, 344. Sorry, typo there. Extra. And the 455.9 is the slope of the line. On the assignment, I ask you paste in that table, the regression table. Let's go back and paste that in. Nope, this one. So go and paste in this stuff here. Don't need this. Not expecting to have this in here. So just the table from the regression output is all I'm asking for. But I want you to explain this number here. What does it represent? And don't tell me I want it in simple words. Don't tell me it's the slope of the regression line or slope of the equation. What does it represent in concrete terms? What does it tell you about summer earnings? Anyone want to take a stab at it? Give an answer for everybody else to use in their assignment? Tristan is trying to. And Matthew is trying. Good. Hmm. It says someone's typing, but I'm not getting anything popping up on my chat window. Yeah, it's a slope. Don't use slope because those aren't words that, if you're explaining this to your grandmother, um, that she won't know what slope means. Well, she might, but you know. So as age increases by 1, earnings increase. Same way. Summer earnings increase by approximately that for every year older a person is. Correct. The only thing I'd add to it, it's a little picky thing, is that this is on average. So if you have 2 students, if you're 1 year older, I can't guarantee that you're going to earn $455 more. But if I looked at all of the students that are aged 18 and all the students aged 19 and worked out what was the average for the 18-year-olds, the average for the 19-year-olds, I would expect the difference between those to be approximately 455. So Tristan, I like the fact you used approximate because it's only an estimate. Um, the only thing to try to keep in your head is that I'm not talking about a specific person or a pair of specific people, but I'm just talking in very general terms because this is the line. It isn't scatter. And we've seen from the scatter that students are all over the place. Little point, but we sometimes slip into making it think like we're talking about individuals instead of averages. It's really easy to slip into. We all do it. But excellent. Thank you. Um, and again, I should have mentioned, I said this thing was the intercept where it crosses the axis. This is garbage because we have no newborns, no little babies that are out there working during the summer and earning minus $3,444. That it makes no sense to even look at any case where the age is probably less than 17 because we don't. Yeah, occasionally we get a 16-year-old student, but um, that it's very unusual. Um, and that's the end of question 1. Question 2, before I get into it, any questions about it? Does it make sense to you? Shanton is typing. I'll wait for an answer. No? Okay. When copying age and summer dollars, how are you able to copy both? Um, that so copying the 2 columns, I could do them one by one. That's probably the safest way. So if you're copying them to a new sheet, which is a good idea and something that's going to come up in question 2, uh, if that's what you were referring to, so it's a good idea so that I don't mess up my initial data sheet. I wanted to use age and summer dollars. So I could go and copy this column, add a new sheet, paste it in, and then go back and the second column, go over to my new sheet and paste it in and work in that fashion. That remembering again, like when doing a scatter chart, if I was doing these 2, if I accidentally copied them in the other order, or they were in the other order. Just a reminder that if I went and select these two and I go to insert a chart, it gives me a scatter chart, but the wrong one. Age is on the vertical and summer earnings on the horizontal. Excel grabs the first one as being X and the second one as being Y. And it always does that, it seems. You can switch it. It involves a fair bit of work. One student discovered how to do that the other day, but he was just so frustrated with the amount of work he had to do. But there are ways around it, but I wouldn't get into it. Just get into the habit of always having the guy on the left and the right. If you were wondering how did I grab two, like when doing my scatter chart from here, of picking this column and then the other one, I do it by selecting something and hitting the control key and then picking the other and then doing it that way. So control is a way of picking things separately. But we're going to need to do that in just a minute with question 2. But there are lots of things in Excel that I don't know, say, and students show me that as much as I use it, I don't learn new features, or I always use the old stuff that I learned, and if there's a better way to do it, I don't have an incentive to go and try to explore to see if there's another way until someone shows me. So get in the habit of teaching one another. That was the great feature of working in the registrar's office for a dozen years, is the staff there were the best team in the world. When someone couldn't understand how to do something, they would, it was an open office that we had, and they'd just sort of call out, does anyone know how to do blah, 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 blah? And someone in the office probably did. They'd come down, show them, help them through it. Made it a very, very productive office because it was a constant teaching environment. So everybody was in the habit of, when they didn't know something, they would just call it out. And it very efficient. In some offices, people are discouraged from doing that because it makes it look like they don't know anything. Our office loved questions. Anyway, so in question 2, if there aren't other questions about 1, that it asks you to start looking at residuals. And this, again, is a habit for looking at adding a variable. So where are my residuals? They were back here, I think. Okay, there they are. So I'm going to be working with these, and that I'll use them a little bit for some things, and then I'll go back and use the original data for some things. I'd suggest, and I've suggested this before, to start a new page with each question on your assignment. So I might just copy this. I might copy all 3 columns just in case I need them, but I shouldn't. But I'm going to copy them anyway. So I'll copy these. I'll make a new sheet. Okay. And so we're going to start with this, and then I'm going to add to it. So let me just make it a little bit bigger. And so it said, do a box and whisker chart of this. So I can, generally with charts, I don't include labels. I just had bad experiences. Sometimes it's worked and sometimes I've gotten errors. I don't know what I do wrong. So I'm going to take this stuff here. It said take the residuals and make a box and whisker. So I'm going to insert a chart, and it's not one of these. So I'm going to go over to all charts, and I'm going to go down here to box and whisker. Okay, here it is. Okay, and so it's just asking you, go and copy this chart, put it in your assignment. go and do it because we got to go back here anyway. So there it is. That, what does it show? These are residuals. So I've got a model that says as you get older, your summer earnings go up. But we know the actual earnings are above and below that line. How much above, how much below? If we looked at my picture of that, I think it's still sitting down here. There it is. So sometimes the actual is way above the line. Sometimes the actual is, well, fair distance below the line. That's quite a distance. I seem to get more extreme ones above than extreme ones below, but I do get some. And most of them are clustered in this band around the line. So in the new chart that I just did, it's over here, here are the ones that are below the line, the ones that are above, and here are the ones that are bunched fairly close. So it says most are bunched fairly close to the line, within $1,000 or $2,000, but I've got some quite a distance, and then some a very big distance above, and some a very big distance below. And that sort of looks like my scatter chart. Okay. The now, and I've got a warning because this is where I ran into trouble. It hasn't seemed to happen when I was making up the solution to your assignment. I ran into this problem, um, and because I was being lazy, and the so I put the warning in here, but it hasn't happened in the last couple classes when demonstrating stuff, so it's not guaranteed to happen. It says to go into the Design tab, select Data, select Edit for horizontal axis labels, and put in the values for international. A lot of steps. So let me go through the steps. We've done this before, but still, so you're in the chart. You've got the Design tab up here. That you go up to Select Data, and you go down here to Edit. Okay, and it says Axis Label Range. So, oh, but I don't have anything to edit. I don't have international here. Okay, let's get out of here. I've got to go back to my original data, and this is what I should have given you instructions to do. I'm just working with numbers, so I'm going to just go and copy a whole bunch of things. I don't know what other things are going to come up in the question, so I grabbed everything I might need. I might have to go back for more. Okay, so I've got all of these guys sitting in here. Now let's go back to my chart. So I go to my chart, I go to Design, I go to Select Data, I go to Edit, and okay, I want International. So here's the International column. Just take the values, don't check the label. With charts, it doesn't invite me to say if I've got labels or not in my data. I can insert them myself. So I'll put those in, and you'll see it's got values of ones and zeros, international, not international, international, not. So click OK. And you get a new chart. And I've got two groups. These are international students. They've got a 1. These are domestic students. They've got a 0. The 1 comes first. You'd think, shouldn't it be 0, then 1? It's just using these as labels. It's viewing it like text as different categories. And the very first student in this list is an international student. So it started out doing the international students, then it did the domestic students. So again, why? It just, I've learned these things over time by accident. Learning by doing. I asked you to change the title so that you say international equals 1, so that it reminds me what's going on within this. That if you wanted to, you could put in a an axis title, and you could have done that sort of thing on the horizontal and said that it says international equals 1 and Canadian equals 0. Oops, put it in the wrong place. I don't know. I did something wrong here. Excuse me. Let me just undo that. It didn't put in a title. Oh, there it is down here. I just didn't click on the title. Um, and so I could type all that stuff in. I can't go and change the 1 to a word and the 0 to a word, unfortunately. It's because this variable is just, its values are just 0 and 1. So that was the next thing it asked me to do, I think. Okay. Copy this. So let me copy that. And second, it just takes a minute to wake up. But you'll notice in this chart, if I was comparing these two groups, this one looks to be a little bit lower than that one. Not much. But again, look at the use of space in my chart. Of all this space from minus to 20,000 up to plus 50,000, almost all the data is between about minus 5,000 and plus 10,000. So here I've got a range of 70,000, but most of the data is within a range of about $15,000. I'm wasting almost all this space here and all this space down here. The outliers are very distracting. I keep looking at them because they jump out at me. So what I'd like you to do is go into your chart here and click on somewhere in here so that you find all of these points light up. Okay? Don't just click down here. And I'll show you what. So if I click down here and I right click, it's going to give me format chart area. And if I were to click on, oh, sorry, I can't format the axes easily, can I? Okay, if I clicked on this, I could format the axis. I don't want to do that. Okay? If I click here, it says format the data. And that's what I want to do. I want to change some aspect of the data, format the data series. So I've got to have clicked on the actual data to format the data series. Click on that. And with a box and whisker, I have a checkbox that says show outlier points. Uncheck that. Boom, they're gone. Okay. Now it's easier to see. And this you saw in assignment 2, if you can remember it, when you were looking at just at the average summer earnings. You saw that the average summer earnings for international students were much lower than Canadian students. And it's not just the average, the whole bundle of them seems to be much lower. That there's quite a difference between the two. And it's easier to see when we take out the outliers. That outliers were very distracting. They were distracting to our averages that we had, if you recall. And this one tells me what the outliers are, using some rule to define what an outlier is. Whereas in assignment 2, you just followed my instructions and said, take these guys out and take those guys out. So now we can see the difference between the two groups much more clearly. That but notice these are not salaries, these are residuals. So if my international students had been much younger than the Canadian students, let's just suppose, then because we know age is important in summer earnings, maybe the difference between international or Canadian are because I'm comparing young to old. And so, but I've already adjusted for that. This is after I've adjusted for age. So I've taken the age factor out, and then I've looked at the international versus Canadian. And so by looking at the residuals, you're looking after you've adjusted for everything else of, of what you still can't explain. Are there differences? And there are definite differences for international. So this is the one I want you to go and copy this and put it in your assignment. So, okay. And then it asks, well, you could look at other things. You know, if you looked at when you did your assignment, we found that the class of 2020 seemed to earn less than the class of 2019. So you can check that out to see if that's happening as well, again, after adjusting for age, because maybe the difference between the two classes was just because one class is older than the other class. And we do have a different mix this year than we did last year. And maybe that different mix in terms of we saw a difference in gender and we saw a difference in domestic and international. So maybe there's those are really what the differences are. I don't know. But maybe there's difference in age as well. We didn't look at that before. So to do that is just a matter of just going back up here. I'm in design, select data. Instead of international, go and pick a different one. So pick class. Whoop. And yeah, there's a little bit of a difference, but not very much. Not nearly as much as we saw with domestic and international. And actually, if after you adjusted, if you put international in your model and then looked at residuals, there's even less difference between the two classes. That it is partially the international domestic mix is being mixed up in this. And so I asked you to go and put that into your assignment. Okay? And that the other differences, gender ends up not being big. Um, that um, so what I ask you to next to do is go and do a regression. So go back here. Now, but my regression, I can do it with this data set, or I can use the original one. Okay, I'm not forecasting residuals. Residuals I just use for little plots and find correlations, not to build models. So if I was back in here, I could go and say, I want to do my regression again. I'm still predicting summer earnings in column K, but instead of just age, I'm going to use age and international. And thankfully, the columns are beside each other. If they weren't, I would have to copy them into a new sheet so that the X variables are both side by side. If class had been in between, I would have to move class out of the way or move these two together. That because this doesn't let me select separate columns. I've got to pick one block. Oops, what did I just do? I did something by accident here. I'm going to go from G. I think that should work. I got labels, new worksheet. Yeah, I think it worked. Yeah, it worked. Okay. And I don't care about the residuals. I'll just look at my model that I've got here. And so my new model, it's got an R-square of 0.16. Still not very good, but it's better. It's got a standard error. It's gone from $5,800 to $5,600. Still not very good. But it's a different model down here. Okay, so it says summer earnings equal to, my intercept changed a bit, minus 1794. My slope for age has changed a bit, 423.88. Not by a lot, because it's not, it's only just a rough estimate. And then for international, it says minus 3271.2 times international. And that's my new model. So I've got two variables in it. And just like we saw in the box and Whisker, that for international, they earned a lot less. Well, this is saying that's what it's telling me in here with this number here, that after I adjust for, oops, sorry, I've got to put age in here. So I've got to adjust for age, but then I have to adjust that international students on average are going to earn less than Canadian students of the same age. So even after, if I had two groups of students, 20-year-old Canadian students, 20-year-old international students, on average, the international students earn less. You may want to experiment. What do you get when you put 0 in here? What's the model look like for Canadian students? What happens when you put 1 in here? What's the model look like when you're looking at international students? And almost think of this as being two models that you've now got. A model to predict summer earnings for Canadians, a model to predict summer earnings for international students. And how do the two models differ from each other? And you'll find that it emphasizes that international students will earn less on average than Canadian students. So it can be useful there. And this model may give bad predictions, but if your intent was to do causal analysis and you wanted to argue that international students, separate from the fact you're paying very, very high fees, but your capacity to pay those fees is less, and that maybe we should have different financial aid for international students and domestic students, this model could help tell you that, even though the predictions are bad, because we've done a causal analysis in this one here. So that's where you may want to be using it in a different type of context of learning from your data. I don't know if there are any questions we've got about regression now after doing that, because we've got a little bit of time left and we can look at the question 3 with probability. Any questions about regression? So I'm doing the assignment for you, but to be honest, I don't care. I'm not concerned about grades in the course. Um, I don't want you to get unreasonably low grades. But what I'd like you in leaving the course is that you actually understand some of this stuff. And if going through the assignment like this helps, then all the better. Okay, nobody's typing anything. So, oh, Jeff is. Okay, good. The last one, this is from the lecture, can't remember, it's from a week ago, that we did the first lecture we had on probability. So whatever day that was. And so I took the data from your assignment that you used in assignment 2 and did much what you had. You looked at it at more things at once. But one of the things we were looking at was the incidence of depression between the class of 2019 and the class of 2020. And I grouped the data into 3 categories to make it so we've got reasonable samples in each category. That I've just given it as a frequency table, whereas in your assignment, I generally ask you to convert these things to percentages. And those percentages were actually probabilities. They were actually conditional probabilities. You looked at percentage by column, which is really the percentage that would have frequent depression among the class of 2019 and frequent depression among the class of 2020. So they were all conditional probabilities that you did. I've asked you to go and use this frequency table to go and do a number of basic probability calculations to ensure that you understand the language of probability. And so how's that language potentially relate back to what you were seeing in a pivot table before? It's a small sample, so all of the numbers you calculate are going to be very, very rough approximations. You could easily be off by 5-8 percentage points either way in your estimates of any probability here. I probably shouldn't have assumed that it was much larger than like 246,000, so it's huge. We did a international survey or a North American survey of students last year and this year on depression. No, we don't have a massive survey. Then we'd have very precise estimates. But let's just think of randomly selecting out of the 246. So some of these are straightforward, like that what is a randomly selected student out of the whole group that experiences frequent depression? What would you have as an answer? Rate it as a fraction, not as a percentage. Yeah. So you're saying you've got 84 and it's out of the whole group. So that's what it is. And you'll probably rewrite that as a percentage. So you're saying 34% or something. I think that's the figure. That in your assignment, students ask, should you write the fraction as well as a percentage? Yeah, probably not a bad idea, because if you make a calculation error, we can see what it is with the fraction, but we can't see what it is with the percentage, because we can get a sense of what was your reasoning by looking at that percentage, at that fraction. I can see it. You took the 84 out of 246, so that helps. If I'm looking at and I'm looking at the class of 2019, so I'm looking at this column, but I'm also looking at this whole row. So, everybody across this row. And so that when I'm saying and, you're looking at where they cross. So that one, but again, I'm looking at everybody. So I presume you'd pick the answer as being 37 out of 246. There was a question about the next one to do with or. How do we figure that one out? And it means that class of 2019, so I'm looking at all of those students, but I'm also looking at, I don't know if I can highlight it as well, at all of these students. So it's anybody, oops, I don't have to go to the 84, do I? I just want this one. Okay, I don't need the whole total. So it's going to be all of those out of the 246. So that's not a problem. This is what you did in your assignment. And I've already told you the answer, but what I'd like you to tell me. Question D. Among the class of 2019, what's the chance a student experiences frequent depression? What would be that calculation? Jeff's typing. You've got, whoops, 37, just a keyboard thing. It shows up as 37 divided by 134. Yeah, that's correct. So you're only looking at that column, and those are the ones you did in your assignment. So you did conditional probabilities. That's like saying probability, frequent depression given class of 2019. And that's generally what you're getting when you're doing percentage of column total or percentage of row total, that you're finding a conditional probability. So those pivot tables that you did, and very frequently that's the type of analysis you would want to be doing to do comparisons, they're going to be conditional probabilities. And just trying to remind you that's what you're doing, and that's what you did in assignment 2. And then we flip it around in E. In F, I want to know, are they independent? And I want you to answer that with probability. And that the we say that if probability of A slash B equals probability of A, and A and B, okay, that basically it says that if knowing B does not affect probability of A, then they're independent. So in this instance, you're looking at frequent depression and the class of 2019. And so it's basically asking, if I know the student is in the class of 2019, does that change my guess as to whether or not they experience frequent depression? And you've got answers to both of those. You know about the general incidence of frequent depression among the two classes, and you've just calculated the chance of a student being depressed if they're in the class of 2019. And if those two are the same, then it says it doesn't matter if you were a student last year or this year, depression happens just as often. But if they're different, then we'd say they're not independent of each other, that there's a relationship. And that's what you said in your assignment. You said that incident of depression was more frequent this year than last year. So you're saying there's something happened. There's a pattern here. COVID happened, but so you would say that they are not independent. And that's sort of what we're going at. So I've gone way over time, just like I did yesterday with my two classes. Um, but I think it's helpful to go and use this as a review of regression and probability. Um, that and it also gives you a reason for coming to class. The prof gives you the answers to the assignment, because I'm not sure how many of you are here, but generally I only get 10 to 15 students showing up to a class. That's maybe less than a third of the class shows. So uh, there's a payoff, and it seems always to be the same group of you that show up. I do appreciate it. I don't like teaching alone. So we'll end it here unless there are any further questions. Uh, if you run into issues on the assignment, I will be downloading the video of this and then re-uploading it. It may take me till noon time to get that done, just because not because I'm lazy, but it's just the speed of uploads and downloads. I had a lot of trouble yesterday, and so you can review this again. But if you still have other questions, send me an email. I should be available pretty much all day today. I'm not sure about tomorrow, uh, how easy it is to get access to me. Um, I'm not sure what my day holds tomorrow. But anyway, you take care. Have a good weekend. Don't forget you've got a quiz on Saturday. It's based upon uh, chapter 10, which is the 2 PowerPoint lectures that I've just posted. Well, I'll repost one that I've got for today. Okay. So you guys take care, and new messages down below. Okay. Will there be a link posted to the video on Tophat? So right now on Tophat, there is a page posted that says assignment 4 questions or something like that. It says day 19. And it opens a whole page, and on it there are 2 videos posted at the moment, the 2 from yesterday, and I'll add your video to that by noontime today. And if you can't find it, send me a note. You can also find all of the videos, because I have to post them to YouTube so that you can see it. And I've made them public on YouTube. So you could probably find any of the videos for the course posted on YouTube now, because I have my own channel, I guess, on YouTube. That so any of the videos created for the course, generally I've had to post to YouTube, and you can find it there. I know a student yesterday. Um, she's been seems searching for me on YouTube as opposed to Tophat, but she found it all, and she's subscribed to my channel. Anyway, you take care. Have a good weekend, and we'll reconnect next week. Take care. Bye bye.